I am Groot. Guardians of the Galaxy is the latest Marvel superhero movie, and what I love about Marvel nowadays is that it is at the top of their game. They can pretty much take any property that they have, the smallest property that not a lot of people have heard of, and turn it into a juggernaut. This isn't the Avengers, this isn't Justice League, this isn't a solo Iron Man, solo Hulk, solo Batman, solo Superman, this isn't X-Men, this isn't Spider-Man, this isn't Fantastic Four, this isn't, lower members like Silver Surfer, Daredevil, characters that not as many people have heard of. It's even lower than that. This is Guardians of the Galaxy, who not a lot of people had heard of until this movie was announced. And boom, this is one of the best superhero movies of all time. Not the best, but it is better than most that are out there, and that is a feat. To take characters that are a bunch of misfits that nobody's really ever heard of before and turn them into these stars, these, characters that are going to go and live for, may possibly become more popular than other characters that we've known of for years and years and years. It's impressive. And the reason that this movie is so successful, in my opinion, is not only is it an action superhero movie, but the comedy is so apparent there that you could bring, your parents, and they will enjoy it just for the comedy aspects. It's so hilarious. This is better than most comedies out there, and it works so well. But the strongest point is the characters, the character development, the casting as well. It works so well. Every character bounces off of each other. It's 5 characters. There are a bunch of misfits that don't know each other that form a group because they want to go after this. They all have this one common enemy in Ronan, who's the main villain of this movie. He's kind of a downer of the movie because he's not amazing. He's just a mediocre villain. I actually thought that the assassin, one of the female assassins that he has, is a little bit more interesting. She's kind of like a robot. She's bald and she's blue. Another thing that I like about this movie is, I keep thinking of it and I just keep thinking of more things, is that there's a lot of Star Wars-esque themes in this movie, as in like the main character, Chris Pratt, Star-Lord, who is kind of like a blend of Indiana Jones and Han Solo. It's all futuristic, it's all, in space. There's a bunch of space battles and ships and explosions, not Michael Bay style, which is awesome. And it's all a lot, there's CGI. For Rocket Raccoon and Groot, they're CGI, but then there's a lot of characters that they could have done CGI, but they're like, no, screw it, let's just put a lot of makeup on there and costumes, and they're so detailed, and you're like, that looks freaking awesome, that looks so much more real, because there's so many aliens that they have to kind of just walk around. Not a lot of people are humans here, or what look like humans. So that's really cool. But the characters, man, Star-Lord Chris Pratt nailed it with his role. He's hilarious. He has an interesting backstory that kind of falls through the entire movie, and you keep seeing glimpses of it until the very end. Gamera, I believe, is the female lead. She has an interesting backstory, which if you don't know about it, do not check it out. Just wait for the movie and you're like, oh, that's so cool. And she's an assassin, a very hardcore assassin. Drax, played by Batista, a wrestler turned actor. Basically, he's just muscles, he's got muscles on his ears. This guy's huge, and they played to his strengths. They kept away from his weaknesses. They gave him the lines that worked for his character and for this actor, and it worked. Like, a lot of people are saying that Batista can't do this kind of role, and I thought he was awesome as this. I can't think of anybody that could have done a better job, honestly, for Batista and his lines that he delivered. He's spot on. I was just like, that is hilarious. They did a great job with it. Groot, which is played by Vin Diesel's voice, is an awesome character because he's a tree. He's a giant tree that can kind of form branches and flowers and vines and all that kind of stuff, and you never know what he's going to make. Like, they get into a situation, you just basically look to see what Groot's going to do, and he gets them out of it. It's awesome. But the character that steals the show, and is now my favorite character from Guardians of the Galaxy, I thought it was going to be Chris Pratt for Star-Lord. He's a close second, but Rocket Raccoon, played by Bradley Cooper. He's the voice of Rocket Raccoon. And what's good about this movie is that they didn't use just Bradley Cooper's normal voice. He changed his voice a little bit, and at the beginning I was like, I don't like this, I want to hear Bradley Cooper's normal voice. But now, as the movie progressed, I was like, no, when I'm looking at Rocket Raccoon and I hear his voice, I think of Rocket Raccoon. I don't think of Bradley Cooper, because he changed it up, and that is Rocket Raccoon's voice. If I heard a tape, my goodness, I'm a 90s kid, or actually I'm born in 86, but anyway, I'm old school. If I heard a recording, just the audio of that voice, I would be like, that's Rocket Raccoon. That is his voice. That is the defining voice for Rocket Raccoon. He is hilarious. He's this little raccoon character that has these giant guns, and he's just blowing stuff up, and he always has these amazing, hilarious one-liners. but he also has a really interesting story, and you really get into his character. There's an emotional attachment there, and you're like, man, what he had to go through to get where he is, it's harsh. And you don't expect it because he has this front that he's hilarious and he's, you know, always blowing stuff up. They really nailed it with Rocket Raccoon. So I love this movie. The character development is totally there. The first act, when they introduce everyone, is really interesting. The second act is the only part where it kind of dipped, which is unfortunate because it just didn't flow as well as I would have liked it to have. But the third act completely is amazing. If the entire movie could have been like the third act, where they basically have this plan, they execute it, and you get right into everyone. And there's a bunch of other characters that are kind of throughout this movie, and I'm like, they're not as interesting, but they worked well for the end of the movie. I didn't care for them in Act 1 and Act 2, but they were there for the third act, and then they made sense. So I'm going to give this movie an 8 out of 10. It's almost a 9. If the ending could have been like that the entire time, like the final battle, and the last thing that Star-Lord says to Ronan, it's awesome. It worked so well for this movie, and I wish that the entire movie could have been like this. I probably would have given it a 9, but I honestly have to go back and see this movie to see if I would give it a 9 because it's so close and it deserves so many more rewatches. It's going to have that rewatchable factor, definitely, because I like rewatching movies, and I have to check this out. Also, just to say, the way that they opened the credits for this movie, I wish that they would do this for every movie because it was so entertaining. Definitely look forward to the opening of this movie. So, thank you all for watching. You've been bearded in. Bearded!